Discover the incredible twist: when a millionaire mistook a stranger's car for a robbery, her life changed forever. Sara wiped her brow as she rushed through the evening rush at the diner, the clattering of plates and the murmur of voices blending into a chaotic symphony. With every order she filled, she felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, a single mom to Ethan and Lily, both of whom deserved more than this. When she arrived home, the kitchen table's clutter of overdue notices seemed to shout at her. Tomorrow would be another day, but so many tomorrows felt like a burden. She sighed, praying for a miracle, her heart tightening with anxiety. Far removed from Sara's struggles, Jessica, a wealthy socialite, sat poised in her marble-floored office, reviewing charity proposals. Like clockwork, her SUV glided past the quaint parks of Maplewood, a striking contrast to her sleek lifestyle. But when she spotted a man nearing Sara's modest car, her heart raced. Was he stealing it? Before she could even process her thoughts, her fingers dialed 911, acting on impulse, utterly convinced she was saving a victim from a crime. Little did she know, she was about to unleash a storm that would shatter one woman's fragile world. As Sara sat at the center of rising scrutiny, the initial shock shifted to pain and anger. Why did she see me as a burden? Why did she judge? She wrote in a heartfelt letter to the local newspaper, the ink smearing slightly under her teary eyes. Those words struck a chord in Maplewood, igniting empathy that crossed traditional boundaries. Concerned neighbors gathered, sharing stories that resonated, a tapestry of struggles woven into the framework of their community. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jessica's eyes opened wide as she read Sara's letter. The raw emotion struck her deeply. She was forced to confront her own preconceived notions, realizing the privileged lens through which she'd viewed the world only hit her insecurities. The impending community meeting buzzed like wildfire through the town, each voice echoing the call for change. Sara felt stronger than before, yet the weight of her family's future loomed ominously. As the meeting approached, Jessica knew she had to face Sara. She could feel the electric tension of their worlds colliding. Would she be able to bridge the divide between them? The community held its breath, waiting for a resolution that felt just out of reach. Sara had no idea how the wealthy woman who thought she was saving her would change everything. Would she accept Jessica's hand when the moment came? The air was thick with uncertainty, and the momentum stirred emotions within Maplewood that could not be ignored. Lives hung in the balance, whispering the promise of transformation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over Maplewood, the community center buzzed with nervous energy. Chairs were set up in rows, a flickering projector ready to display Jessica's slides of potential changes. Sara stood at the back of the room, her heart pounding. She gripped the edge of the folding chair in front of her, fighting the urge to run away. The air was thick with anticipation. Friends and neighbors exchanged glances, murmurs swelling like an old song long forgotten but suddenly remembered. Many were eager to see how two very different women would confront the issues that tied them together. Sara glanced around the room, her mind racing with thoughts of Ethan and Lily. They deserved a future free of worry, but was she strong enough to demand that future? Just as the meeting began, Jessica made her entrance. She stood there for a moment, framed by the doorway, her designer outfit stark against the ordinary backdrop of the community center. Whispers followed her, and Sara felt her stomach knot. This was the woman whose snap judgment had nearly torn her life apart. Yet, she could also be the catalyst for change. Taking a deep breath, Jessica stepped forward. Thank you all for being here. I know many of you might feel conflicted given recent events. Her words were steady, yet there was a tremor of vulnerability beneath them. What I did was wrong. I made a choice without knowing the truth, and it resulted in unnecessary harm. Sara's chest tightened. Would she admit to being wrong? Jessica took a moment, glancing at Sara seated back in the corner. Their eyes locked briefly, and it felt like a lifetime. The room faded away, and all that remained was the weight of the moment. I recognize that I live in a bubble, and I want to change that. Jessica continued, her voice growing stronger. We need to listen to each other's stories. I want to help the community, but first, I need to learn from you. Sara shifted in her seat, both perplexed and intrigued. Could Jessica actually understand her struggles? The tension felt almost electric, as if everyone in the room was holding their breath. Then, a voice from the crowd called out, "How do we know you're genuine?" It was Mrs. Henderson, an old-timer with a reputation for cutting through facades. Gasps echoed through the room, and Sara felt her heart race. Jessica didn't flinch. That's a fair question. I know actions speak louder than words. That's why I'm not here to just talk, I want to collaborate. I want to hear from you, understand what you need. I want to right my wrongs. A murmur passed through the room. Sara felt her own defenses start to lower, the sharp edges of her frustration softening just a bit. Maybe this was not just about Sara's struggle or Jessica's guilt. Maybe it was about the community as a whole and a chance for a new beginning. The discussion moved forward, ideas being tossed around like confetti. Solutions, dreams, and cooperation filled the air, a stark contrast to the apprehension from before. Sara started to feel embers of hope flicker inside. Yet, as the meeting reached its height, Sara caught sight of Ethan peeking in through the back door. His small hand waved, pulling her attention sharply away from the hopeful discussions in front of her. The sight of him filled her heart with a mixture of joy and worry. She wanted to protect him from disappointment, but here was an opportunity for something bigger. Before she realized it, Jessica was at her side, asking gently, "Is everything okay?" Sara paused, glancing between her children, the crowd, and Jessica. Everything felt like it was hanging by a thread. Could she trust this moment? Would she grasp it or let fear carry her back to the shadows? Sara swallowed hard, knowing an answer was expected, but unsure of what words would come out. Would she take a leap of faith, or retreat back into her fears? As her gaze met Jessica's, an unspoken question lingered in the air: what would she choose to believe? The next chapter awaited, full of unknown possibilities. The chatter in the room swirled around Sara like a whirlwind, but her focus was fixed on the two faces that mattered most: Ethan and Lily. Ethan's hand waved enthusiastically, pure joy radiating from his little figure. But Lily, just behind him, wore an expression of concern that pierced Sara's heart. "Just a minute," she whispered to Jessica, who nodded, giving Sara a moment to collect herself. As she made her way through the crowd, Sara's mind raced. What if this meeting fell apart? What if Jessica couldn't follow through on her promises? What if this was all just a show, a way to ease her own conscience while neglecting the real issues facing families like hers? "Mommy!" Ethan's voice broke into her thoughts as she reached them. "Did you see? Miss Jessica is here." "Yes, sweetheart," Sara replied, kneeling down to his level. "I see her. We're talking about how to make things better." Lily looked up at her mother, hope sparkling in her eyes. "Will it help us? Will we be okay?" The questions tugged at Sara's heart. How could she assure her children when she wasn't even sure of anything herself? The meeting felt monumental, a moment when things could shift in a new direction. But fear also whispered dark thoughts, telling her it might all end in disappointment. "Let us stay positive," Sara said, trying to infuse her voice with confidence. "Ms. Jessica is trying to change things, and we can be part of that." Turning to look back at Jessica, Sara felt a wave of uncertainty crash over her again. Would she truly be open? Would she really seek to understand the struggles of those like Sara and her children? A lump formed in her throat. She turned her gaze back to her children, who were now both watching her intently, expecting reassurance. It was a reminder that protecting Ethan and Lily meant she had to push through her fears. Taking a deep breath, she gently beckoned them to come with her. As they approached Jessica, the energy in the room shifted again, a palpable mix of excitement and anxiety. Sara felt Jessica's eyes lock onto hers, and something about the way she stood, firm and ready, softened Sarah's scrape of doubt. "Sara," Jessica said, her voice ringing with sincerity, "I wanted to speak with you about how we can collaborate. Your voice matters here. It's time the people who've been affected take the lead in these discussions." The crowd, now a living entity of hope and trepidation, began to buzz with murmured agreement. More voices joined in, asking how they could turn this moment into something tangible. Ideas flowed like a rushing river: community gardens, scholarship funds for local children, support groups for working parents. With each new suggestion, Sara felt herself unshackling from fear. "Together, we can find solutions," Jessica reinforced. "But I need your guidance. What do you want from me?" At that moment, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. Here was an opportunity to speak, to share, to let her voice rise above the noise of doubt. The tentative hope she had clung to began to feel real, a fragile but fierce flame urging her to take a step forward. As Sara looked down at her children, she knew she had to be courageous. The floor felt like it was shifting under her feet as she opened her mouth to speak, words rushing out before doubt could drown them out. "We need education initiatives. We're scared for our kids. They should have the same opportunities as everyone else." Ethan and Lily's faces lit up, sensing their mom was forging a new path. The weight of expectation in the room was tangible. Silence settled for a moment, then a ripple of enthusiastic agreement spread. Sara couldn't help but smile, the embers of hope sparkling into a small flame, but just when she thought they were gaining traction, the door unexpectedly flew open. A newcomer stepped in, face flushed and eyes wild, holding a flyer. "Did you hear?" she shouted, breathless. "There's a chance to bring actual resources to our community. But we need to act fast." Shock rippled through the audience. Uncertainty retook the microphone again, and all eyes darted toward the newcomer, curiosity intertwining with anxiety. As the momentum shifted yet again, Sara felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. What was this opportunity? What impact would it have as they fought for their voices to be heard? In the growing chaos, Sara realized they were standing on the edge of something vast, a story that was still being written. Would it lead them toward the brighter future she envisioned for her children, or somewhere darker and more uncertain? The question hung heavy in the air, ready to ignite everything they'd begun to build together. Sara felt her pulse quicken as the newcomer clutched the flyer tightly, her eyes shimmering with excitement. The room was electric, a mix of murmurs and gasps filling the air as everyone leaned in, eager to hear what this unexpected news might bring. "What do you mean, resources?" Jessica asked, moving closer, her voice calm but edged with urgency. The newcomer stood proud, lifting the flyer like a banner. "There's a philanthropic organization ready to invest in our community. They've partnered with local leaders and they're looking for projects to fund. We need to present our ideas within the next week." The implications washed over Sara like a tidal wave. This could be the opportunity they had desperately been waiting for. Change was suddenly tangible, darting within reach as the crowd erupted into a whirlwind of ideas. Voices tangled, each person trying to grasp onto their vision for what could be. "We should propose after-school programs," someone called out. "No, let's push for health initiatives," another chimed, their face glowing with the possibility. Amidst the fray, Sara felt her thoughts scatter like leaves in the wind. She exchanged a glance with Ethan, whose excited eyes mirrored her own hopes, while Lily's thoughtful frown revealed her uncertainty. Before Sara could fully process the chaos, she saw Jessica raising her hands, trying to bring order back to the crowd. "Everyone, settle down. We all want the same thing. Let us focus on what really matters. What projects will truly impact our children's future?" Sara's heart raced. It was her moment. This was what she had fought for. She stepped forward, calling out over the influx of ideas. "Community education should be our top priority. We need funds for training programs for parents to support their kids' learning. A wave of collective nods surged through the crowd, murmurs of agreement rising to a crescendo. Ethan and Lily held hands, their little bodies bouncing with excitement. This was real. This was happening. The newcomer, still radiating excitement, captured the crowd's attention once more. I can help coordinate a meeting next week. We'll draft a proposal showcasing all our ideas, highlight the ones with the most potential, and send it off. We need to act quickly. A buzz coursed through the crowd as everyone began sharing ideas again, exchanging input, offering their skill sets for collaboration. Sara felt herself thrust into the center of this energy, buoyed by a mixture of hope and adrenaline. They were no longer invisible voices, they were a community that demanded to be heard, but just as they began to transform fragmented ideas into organized plans, Sara looked back towards the door. A familiar face had slipped through the crowd. It was Max, her old high school friend, now wearing the gray of a corporate suit. What is going on here? He asked, eyebrows raised in surprise. Max's presence sent a ripple of apprehension through Sara. She had spent years building her life away from old acquaintances, forging a path that felt independent of her past. What would he think of her now? Max. She called, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. We're trying to develop projects for education and community development. He studied her, confusion peeling away as realization settled in. Education? In this neighborhood? He asked slowly, as if trying to reconcile the Sara he knew with the woman standing before him now. Something in his tone ignited a new worry within her. Was he going to scoff at their ambitions? Would he support them? Why don't you share your ideas? Jess prompted, sensing the rising tension. The crowd's anticipation shifted focus back toward her, and Sara could feel a spark of courage begin to rise with every heartbeat. As she headed toward Max, an unexpected question lingered on the tip of her tongue, both daunting and liberating. Do you believe in second chances? She asked, catching him off guard as a bubble of fear began to settle in her stomach. In that moment, everything around them faded to a hush. Would his answer set them on a path they could only dream of, or would it send them tumbling back into doubt? The crowd held its breath, hoping Sara's leap of faith would change the course of their fight for a better future. Max took a step back, his expression a mix of confusion and surprise. The room felt colder, the electric excitement from moments earlier fading into a heaviness that clung to the air. Second chances? He echoed, as if tasting the words. Sara could see a flicker of understanding in his eyes, but also uncertainty. Yes, she said, her voice firming up as her heart raced. The neighborhood has been overlooked for too long. We have ideas. We want to rebuild, to make a difference. But we need support. Do you believe we can do this? The silence stretched, pulling everyone's attention. The crowd leaned in, their collective hope held together in the balance of this moment. Max's brow furrowed deeper, and for a moment, she thought he might dismiss them. Look, Sara, he started, his voice lower now, filled with a seriousness that made her stomach churn. It's not easy to change perceptions, especially about a place like this. Her breath hitched, but she stood taller, fighting the urge to retreat. And that's why we need to start. We can change perceptions. One step at a time. But for that, we need help. His gaze softened, and there was an intensity behind his eyes that seemed to weigh the possibilities. What are you planning? As she began to explain their vision training programs, tutoring for the kids, health initiatives, she saw the skepticism in his posture slowly shift. He listened, his arms crossed tightly across his chest, but his frown softened. Those are powerful ideas, he finally admitted, nodding ever so slightly. But what makes you think anyone would want to invest in this neighborhood? Because we are passionate, Sara said, her voice lifting with fervor. And because this is home. We have seen what it can become, and we're ready to fight for that. We've already started making connections, building a support system within the community. The crowd murmured approval, and Sara could feel the warmth of their energy fueling her confidence. Max's eyes flickered to the group of eager faces surrounding them. Perhaps the dynamism in the room was starting to break through his corporate armor. "I'll be honest," he said, taking a breath as if the words were heavy. "I didn't expect you to be this determined. If you're willing to put in the work, I might know some people who could be interested in helping. But this won't be easy. It's not just about ideas, it's about proving you can execute them." A cheer broke out in the crowd, and excitement rippled through Sara like electric current. She stepped forward, the rush of adrenaline lighting her up. "We can do this together, Max. We'll prove it to you." Determination washed away her worries. Was this really happening? Were their dreams of change aligning with reality? As she locked eyes with him, the world around them faded again, leaving just the two of them, two people on the brink of something monumental, but just then, a loud bang echoed from outside, bringing everyone back to reality. The crowd turned, confusion shading their hopeful faces. Sara's heart raced again, but this time in fear. What had just interrupted their moment? Max looked serious, his corporate demeanor suddenly returning. "Stay here. I'll check it out," he said swiftly, turning towards the door. "No. We should go together," Sara insisted, a surge of protectiveness pushing her forward. Max hesitated, caught between his instinct to protect her and the urgency of the situation. "We need to stay focused," he said sharply, but she could see doubt creeping back into his eyes. Would their newfound alliance hold strong against whatever lay beyond those doors? As Max moved toward the exit, Sara felt the weight of that question hanging in the air, hanging like a thread ready to snap. Whatever happened next could change everything, and not just for them. As the chaos unfolded outside, she knew she had to be ready for whatever came. Sara's heartbeat thundered in her chest as she watched Max stride toward the door. She felt the tension in the room thicken, a mixture of fear and anticipation coursing through her like electricity. She glanced at the crowd, their anxious faces mirrored her own uncertainty. "Max!" she yelled, desperation clawing at her throat. "Please don't go alone." Max paused, his hand on the doorknob. He turned slightly, eyes scanning her face for signs of fear. "I'll be quick. I just need to see what's going on." "No." The word burst from her, raw and unyielding. "I can't let you face whatever's out there by yourself. We're in this together." For a moment, the world outside felt distant, but the blast of another noise shattered the moment, a loud crash followed by shouting. It was growing closer, and Sara's instincts screamed at her to act. Taking a deep breath, Sara stepped forward. "We need to go now. Whatever it is, it could be dangerous." Max's resolve cracked, and he reluctantly nodded. "All right. But we need to stick together. Stay close." As they stepped into the hallway, the air shifted. The excitement of the earlier meeting faded into unease. They moved closer to the front door. Max positioned himself slightly ahead, a protective stance that reminded Sara of an unyielding guardian. Peering out the glass, they saw a small group of teenagers gathered on the street, faces twisted in anger as they shouted at someone who was obscured from view. A dingy car sat in the middle of the street, its driver seemingly pleading for understanding. "What's happening?" Max hissed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but it doesn't look good," Sara replied, her stomach tightening. "We should call the police." Max hesitated, his usual corporate confidence faltering. Then, without warning, a loud voice rang out from the crowd. "You think you can just park here and ignore us? You don't belong in this neighborhood." The tension was palpable. The image of the driver, a middle-aged man now wearing a look of utter panic, was etched in Sara's mind. It was a classic case of misunderstanding, she could feel it. "Look at him," she urged Max, her heart aching for the man who was quickly becoming the focal point of the mob. "He is scared. We need to help him." "How can we help? They don't even know us." Max shot back, conflict brewing in his expression. "Because we can be the voice of reason." Before he could respond, Sara pushed past him, determination flooding her veins. She stepped out onto the porch and called out, raising her hands in the universal signal for peace. "Hey! Everyone, wait!" The throng turned to her, brows furrowing with suspicion. Panic rippled through her as their eyes fell on her, searching for answers. She sensed Max hovering behind her, uncertain but unwilling to step back. "What is going on here?" Sara asked, trying to keep her tone steady. "This isn't the way to handle things." A girl stepped forward, her expression fierce. "He thinks he can just drive through here like it's nothing. He doesn't care about us. Please. That's not true." The driver begged, his distress rising above the noise. "I was just lost, trying to find a friend's house." Sara turned to him. "See? He's not from around here. Let us not escalate this." "We can talk," but before she could finish, someone shouted from the back, "We don't need another outsider telling us what to do." The crowd surged forward, and Sara felt a rush of adrenaline. This could spiral out of control. Max stepped beside her, a flicker of something new in his eyes. "Maybe we need to try a different approach." Suddenly, the possibility of failure loomed heavy over them. Would they really be able to save this man, and perhaps their own unfolding dream in the process? The wind picked up, rustling nearby trees, echoing the volatile emotions in the air. As Max met her gaze, they both realized they needed to act decisively or risk losing everything they had just begun to build. What would they do next to de-escalate the situation? And could it be a reflection of their greater vision for the community? Sara's heart pounded with both fear and hope as she stood on the precipice of that decision. The crowd pressed in, their anger simmering just below the surface. Sara's mind raced. She could see Max's jaw clenching, a clear sign of his own mounting anxiety. "Max," she whispered, "we can't let this turn violent. We have to find a way to reach them." He nodded, though uncertainty remained etched on his face. "Listen!" Sara shouted, her voice slightly quavering but louder than the chaos. "I understand you're upset. But violence isn't the answer." A moment of silence fell, thick and tense. For a split second, she felt the weight of the crowd's energy shifting, like the calm before a storm. "What do you know about it?" The fierce girl shot back. "You don't live here. You don't care about us." Sara took a slow breath, steadying herself against the swell of tension. "You're right. I don't, not yet. But I'm here now, and I want to understand. We're all human, we all have stories. Can we talk instead of shout?" Max stepped a little closer to her, his body language signaling support. Sara drew on that strength and pressed on, "Let us figure this out together, okay? No one wants someone to get hurt." A heavy silence hung in the air as the girl seemed to consider Sara's words. But then another voice piped up from behind her, cutting through the moment. "What do you know about hurt? Look around. We're the ones who face it every day." "Exactly," Sara responded quickly, desperation creeping in again. "Don't you think an outsider facing those challenges would want to make things better? I see the fear in that man's eyes. If we keep escalating this, we'll only add to the hurt." The crowd reacted, murmurs rippling through. For every nod of agreement, there were also scornful shakes of the head. Max searched the crowd while Sara focused back on the fearless girl, whose expression had softened just slightly. "What do you really want?" He challenged boldly, addressing the anger but also the hurt he sensed beneath it. There was a pause, and for a moment, Sara felt they could reach something deeper than anger. "We want to be seen," the girl said, voice shaking. "We want our issues acknowledged." "It's okay to be angry," Sara affirmed gently. "But taking it out on someone who might not even know better? That won't solve anything. Can we show this man the real problem? The things you face every day?" As the words hung between them, Sara noticed a flicker of recognition in the girl's eyes. The hostility began to wane, replaced with something almost vulnerable. "Why should we trust you? Because I believe in community, Sara replied, her voice steadier now. And it starts with listening. Let us give this man a chance, then we can talk about what we need to make this place better for everyone. Max whispered to her, what if they don't come together? As if reading her thoughts, the driver called out, look, I'm just a guy trying to find his way. I would never disrespect your neighborhood. Please, let us talk. The words seemed to hang in the air, the crowd wavering as they absorbed the unusual plea for understanding. Sara watched the girl closely, her heart racing with hope. If they could just find some common ground, but the moment was interrupted by a loud crash from the back of the crowd. A bottle broke against the sidewalk, shattering the fragile piece. Shouts erupted once more, the anger reigniting. Sara. Max's voice broke through her thoughts. We need to do something now before it's too late. With the world hanging on a knife's edge, Sara realized just how precarious their situation had become. Not only were they at the brink of violence, but they were also standing firm at an inflection point for the community. Would chaos break them apart, or could they help everyone find their way home? In that moment, Sara knew they had to take a risk, a bold step into the unknown that could shatter everything or heal unseen wounds. What that step would be, she had no idea, but she pushed aside her fears, ready to stand firm. Max, just follow my lead. As the crowd surged again, they prepared to face not just the roiling emotions, but the undeniable truth that would change everything they thought they knew. What would they uncover, and could it truly lead towards understanding, or would it deepen the divide further? The bottle crash echoed through the air like gunfire, sending a jolt of fear rippling through Sara's core. She felt the blood rush from her face, heart pounding fiercely in her chest. The crowd swelled with fury once more, each person feeding off the other's rage like embers in a dying fire. Get a grip. Max shouted, desperation in his voice. He stepped ahead of Sara, clearly trying to shield her from the overflowing chaos. Footsteps scampered back, giving way to rising tension. But we can't let this spiral. Sara, what's our move? Before she could respond, the fierce girl from earlier, who appeared to step back into the throng of chaos like an electric current looking for a ground, waved her arms. You think you can come in here, talk a pretty talk, and we'll just forget? You don't know us. We're not asking you to, Sara called out, pushing through the agitated crowd. But we need to listen to each other. What you're feeling matters. What's your story? The girl blinked, caught in the raw honesty of Sara's plea. Around them, the murmurs began to shift. Some faces scrunched up in skepticism, while others displayed a curiosity that hinted at vulnerability. The collective heartbeat of the crowd faltered momentarily, an opening, however fragile. Why should we share with you? Another voice shouted from the back, a man with teeth clenched in frustration. You'll just walk away like the others. And what happens next? Do we stay divided, tearing each other apart? Sara's voice, though shaky, rang out with determination. That's not a future. That's a nightmare. I want to stand with you. All I need is a chance. Amidst the chaos, solidifying her words, the driver caught Sara's eye, nodding slowly. The recognition that he too was being forgotten made her heart swell with hope. We can't blame each other for what we don't understand. There's a bigger problem here, we have to break down those walls. The crowd began to waver, some shifting restlessly, others breathing deeply, as though the air was thick with unspoken truths. Sara seized her moment. Tell us. What do you need? What keeps you up at night? Let us hear you. We're here. The fierce girl glanced back at her, and there was something raw in those eyes, something begging to be set free. You want to know the truth? Fine. We need jobs. We need to be treated like human beings, not just statistics in some government report. Every day is a fight. We don't even have enough resources to care for our own, another voice chimed in. It's like it doesn't matter. But you fly in here with your clean shoes and privilege. But I'm willing to listen, to learn, Sara urged, raising her hands in surrender. And I'll stand by you to navigate this together. You're not alone in this. Max stepped closer, linking their arms as if forming a barrier against the encroaching storm. What can we do to make this right? How can we work together? Suddenly, the ground shook with a roar as another bottle flew through the air, narrowly missing a nearby car. The crowd recoiled, anger bubbling anew. Fear loomed like a dark cloud. Sara's mind spun as she saw the glimmer of panic in Max's eyes. No. Please, we can't give in to this. She shouted into the fray, ready to throw herself into the chaos should it erupt again. But the fierce girl didn't back down. She drew in a deep breath, legs poised like an athlete waiting to sprint. If you truly want in, then prove it. Help us create the change we need. But if you're just here to talk, you can walk away. The ultimatum hung in the air like a spark waiting to ignite. Sara's heart raced. What would it take to earn their trust? Was she truly ready to commit herself to this community? With uncertainty swirling inside her, Sara faced the girl, and for a heartbeat, everything around them felt suspended in possibility. She took a step forward. I'll prove it. Just show us what to do. The crowd shifted again, eyes narrowing in new light. A challenge had been thrown down, and with it, a chance, perhaps the only chance. What lay ahead felt as uncertain as the brewing storm, but Sara could feel it in her bones. They were on the brink of something, and it would either change them all or tear them apart. What came next? Would they stand united or be swept away by the tides of division? The words hung heavy in the air, electric with expectation. Sara felt the intensity of the crowd push and pull around her. Some members were still clenching makeshift weaponry, wild fury dancing in their eyes. She could practically hear their thoughts churning, a blend of curiosity, frustration, and skepticism about this newcomer who dared to demand change. Show us what to do. The fierce girl challenged, her voice now softer but still raw. You think it's that easy? No, it never is, Sara admitted, her voice steady despite the turmoil. But I believe we can find a way. If we work together, we can make moves that matter. You said you need jobs, let us talk about how we get the resources to create that. A ripple of murmured voices began as people processed her words. Some looked skeptical while others seemed to contemplate the possibility for the first time. Max squeezed Sara's arm, his warmth anchoring her as the crowd swayed beneath the pressure of the moment. Jobs won't come overnight, a tall man finally spoke, stepping forward. They take time, commitment, and people willing to fight. But it's been so long since anyone gave a damn about us. I'm here to show you I do care, Sara replied, her eyes locking onto his. Max and I won't just walk into the community and leave you behind. We'll stay and we'll get our hands dirty, if that's what it takes. The man studied her, searching for something. Trust, perhaps. Or maybe just a hint of sincerity that had long been absent from visitors. Okay, he finally said, nodding slowly. But if you side with us, it means facing the truth of our lives, and it's messy. Messy. The very word resonated with every fiber of Sara's being. Her life had been neat, orderly. But she couldn't ignore the beauty that surfaced when one dared to embrace chaos and vulnerability. Then let us dig in. Max exclaimed, his enthusiasm breaking through the tension like sunlight piercing dark clouds. We need to find out what the root issues are and get the ball rolling. With that, the crowd began to respond, voices rising as they discussed their struggles: lack of employment, resources, and trust. It was a murmuring storm building into something powerful. One by one, amplifying their needs and hopes. I need to support my family, cried a woman with tears glimmering in her eyes. I've been working 2 jobs and my brother fell through the cracks and nobody helped, another shouted. We can't keep pretending the system works for all of us. Sara listened, absorbing their stories like a sponge. Each word, each revelation, the collective hurt forming a mosaic of community heartbreak. But woven within that sorrow was also fire and undeniable will to rise. Slowly, she began to envision a plan, hardly able to believe the dream was sparking in her mind. What if we organize a community meeting? Maybe we can invite local business owners to hear your stories and discuss creating job opportunities. The fierce girl regarded Sara, surprise flickering across her face. You think they'll listen? Why shouldn't they? Sara replied, throwing caution to the wind. This community has voices worth hearing. It's time for someone to show up, not just in words but in action. If we set this in motion, maybe they'll want to help. A moment of silence followed her declaration. Doubt hovered, but so did anticipation. The fierce girl absorbed Sara's confidence, her brow furrowing as thoughts raced behind her piercing eyes. Finally, she nodded once, determination firing up anew. All right. If you're serious, I'll help you gather people for this meeting. But it's on you to carry this through. Together, Sara insisted, feeling a swell of energy. We're in this together. Just then, a loud crash echoed again. Bottles smashed against the pavement, throwing shards of glass into the air like a warning signal. The crowd tensed, the fire of anger momentarily reigniting. Look, there's still work to do. Max yelled, as people's instincts urged them to flee. Stay together. Stay focused. Turning back toward the fierce girl, Sara felt the weight of their hope pressing in, a storm brewing not just outside but within them all. A fight for their voices, their futures loomed ahead, but would they step out of chaos and demand change, or would fear sabotage this fledgling effort? Sara took a deep breath as she braced herself against the incoming wave ready to break. The time to stand strong was now. Would they rise together, or would the weight of past failures drag them down once more? Max's shout pierced the air, igniting a new resolve within Sara. As the bottles shattered like glass hearts on the pavement, she felt an awakening not just in her, but around her. Faces in the crowd shifted, caught between fear and the embers of hope igniting a clearer path forward. Let them throw their anger. Let them see our determination. Sara shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. We are not here to dwell in violence. We are building a future. Her words resonated with some, sending ripples of recognition through the crowd. The fierce girl, whose name Sara still didn't know, took a step closer, her expression softened. You really believe we can turn this around? I believe we have to, Sara replied, locking eyes with her. Fear and anger had ruled long enough. It was time for hope to take the stage. Max steadied beside her, mirroring that burgeoning spirit. We'll gather everyone we can, neighbors, local businesses, anyone willing to listen. It's time they hear the truth. As the tense air began to shift, Sara returned her attention to the crowd, who were still processing her earlier proposal. We need real conversations, she implored, every word spilling out like an unspoken promise. Real commitments. If we want change, we must hold each other accountable. Together, we can create that spark of opportunity. A murmur of agreement flowed through the crowd, cautiously at first, then growing more animated with every heartbeat. The fierce girl lifted her chin, the weight of her past struggles visible in her fierce determination. Let us do this, she declared. I'll talk to my family and friends. We'll all come. The realization that they would coalesce fueled Sara's own fire. This could indeed be the moment they had all been waiting for. She turned to the man who had questioned her earlier. You said you want to be seen. Show up. Share your story. Help us create the change that matters. At her call, more voices joined in, echoing her urgency, igniting something bigger than just Sara's vision. They were no longer just a crowd, they were a community full of potential. Each story shared was a thread weaving them together, forming a tapestry strong enough to resist the tumult around them. Just as the energy peaked, a noise broke through, but it was not the sound of violence. A chorus of sirens wailed in the distance, the flashing lights reflecting off the buildings nearby. Sara's heartbeat quickened again, but this time it was a tempo of determination. The police are coming. We can work with them, not against them. We need to stand strong together. Max turned to her, furrowing his brow. But they might not see it that way. No, she interrupted. If we show them that we're united and standing for something meaningful, they'll have no choice but to listen. Today is our moment. With that, Sara looked around, and the mild flickers of hope morphed into blazing torches of resolve. They stood shoulder to shoulder now, facing whatever would come next with hearts full of courage. The crowd began chanting, a collective heartbeat of change. Together. 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 As the police cars came into view, Sara willed her body to remain steady, filling her lungs with the fresh air of potential. This was far from over, but whatever untangled emotions and realities lay before them, they would confront it united. As the officers exited their vehicles, confusion crossed their faces, but no one spoke. Sara stepped forward, breaking through the ranks. "We're ready to have a conversation," she called out, unafraid. "We want to change the tide of misunderstanding and fear. All we ask is for the chance to be heard." The officers glanced at each other, visibly surprised by the community's unity, their demeanor shifting from apprehension to cautious interest. "Let us talk," one officer replied, stepping forward. The crowd parted enough for Sara to see hopeful eyes reflecting both fear and excitement. This was the moment she dreamed of. Not just for herself, or for her children, but for all of Maplewood, and with that, their true journey began, a journey grounded in shared stories, commitment, and collective empowerment. They were ready to dismantle the barriers before them and step boldly into a new dawn. Sara turned to Max, her voice breaking just slightly. "We can do this," he smiled, the weight of her words anchoring both of their compasses. "Yes. Yes, we can." As the sun set on those chaotic yet transformative moments, Maplewood began to weave a story anew, bound together by the threads of understanding, hope, and the power of standing united. So, what are you waiting for? If you felt even a spark of inspiration from this journey, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us keep these stories alive. Comment your thoughts below and let us know how this ending made you feel. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Together, we can change the narrative, one story at a time.